Thank you very much. Well, it's always an ungrateful task to be the last speaker of a conference before the lunch break, but I do hope that I can keep your attention for the remaining minutes. Well, I must admit that my presentation is a bit different from the others of this panel because it offers a case study instead of a systematic approach of a given fundamental right. In the next 20 minutes, I'm going to deal with a recent decision, recent judgment of the ECtHR, in which the court decided that the shortcomings of the minority voting system in Hungary constitute a violation of the right to vote under Article 3. Protocol number 1 in conjunction with the right to non-discrimination under Article 14 of the European Convention on Human Rights, as the system, the Hungarian system, leads to the disenfranchisement of the minority voters. Well, the judgment may be of interest at least for two reasons. On the one hand, it sheds light on the problems and challenges the lawmaker has to face when elaborating the minority voting system. As you may know, a number of methods are used worldwide to foster or facilitate the positive discrimination of minority voters. Given the taking into account the Central European focus of this conference, let me recall the voting system, the electoral system of Slovenia, for example, Croatia. Both of these systems provide or secure reserved seats for the minorities, or even the electoral laws of Poland, Serbia, or Romania contain some special provisions for the national minorities. In contrast, the Czech Republic or Slovakia didn't introduce any special provisions for the parliamentary representation of the national minorities. Of course, they are not obliged to do at all. And on the other hand, the decision analyzed here helps us to explore the true meaning of the free elections, the concept of free elections, or the concept of secrecy of vote. So my presentation unfolds as follows. Firstly, I'm going to outline the background of the judgment. In doing so, I briefly sketched the landscape of the Hungarian national minorities, or the national minorities in Hungary. Then I devote some words to the electoral system of Hungary in order to present its working logic. In the second part, I'm going to explore the outcomes of the recent three parliamentary elections to give you a better sense of the problem. And the third part aims to analyze the judgment of the court, even the applicant's claims, and I devote some words to the government's standpoint, and I'm going to analyze the decision of the court. And finally, I make some concluding remarks. So Hungary, in the heart of the Carpathian Basin, as you may know, it's not exclusively the homeland of the Hungarians. It is also the home of many other nationalities and communities who have arrived here during the centuries past since the conquest of the basin by the Hungarians. The Act on the Rights of Nationalities, it has a definition for national minorities which may be too long to read. However, let me raise your attention for the key element of this definition. So, resident in Hungary for at least 1 century. Ethnic groups that are unable to fulfill this criterion, for example, the Russians or the Chinese, can be qualified as national minorities. Currently, the law recognizes as many as 13 national minorities. Let's have a closer look on them. So the largest minority in Hungary is the Romani community. As for the population figures, we have to rely on the population census of 2011 because the last census conducted last year, so its results are not available yet. And of course, the numbers you can see here are based on the self-declaration of the respondents. And the second largest minority is the German minority, and we have Romanian, Slovakian, Croatian, Serbian, Polish, and Bulgarian, Greek, and other minorities as well. And as for the percentage values, only 2 of these 13 minorities are above 1%, and the other 11 are well below 1%. Then let me show you one more piece of data that paints a somewhat different picture. The population census in Hungary also gives the opportunity to the respondents to declare their dual identity, if any. And as you can see, 96% of the minority respondents declared that he or she has a Hungarian identity as well. Thank you very much. You have just overtaken me. And only 4% of the respondents declared that she or he has no Hungarian identity in addition to his minority identity. Now we have arrived to the Hungarian electoral system. I won't deliver you an in-depth analysis because it's a pretty complex system. Broadly speaking, it's a mixed system. 106 MPs are elected in single-member districts in English-style first past the vote system. And the remaining 93 MPs are elected on national lists. This also means that the voters have 2 votes. We cast one vote for one of the SMD candidates, and we cast the other vote for a national list. This leads us to the next questions. Who may set up a list? According to the electoral law of Hungary, a list may be drawn up either as a party list or as a national minority list. This is an important piece of information. But in order to understand the core problem of the minority voting, let's say that he's a Hungarian voter belonging to the Greek minority. Before the parliamentary election, he has 2 options. He may decide to take part on the election as an ordinary voter. In this case, he may cast 2 votes, one vote for an SMD candidate and 1 vote for a party list. On the other hand, he may, prior to the election, request for registration as a national minority voter. According to the law, a request for registration as a national minority voter shall contain an indication of the national minority. To put it another way, he has to reveal his identities, his nationality. And if doing so, he has 2 votes as well, 1 vote for an SMD candidate, but the other votes shall be cast to his national list. And we can say that, and it must be emphasized that in this case, he cannot vote for the party list. So we can say that he is forced by the law, by the Hungarian law, to choose between express his national identity or express his political party affiliation. Now let's pose another crucial question. What is the preferential aspect? What is the preferential element of this minority voting system? Maybe it goes without saying that minority voting system always implies a kind of relief, a kind of preferential treatment. For example, exemption from the electoral threshold in Poland, for example, or reserved seats for minorities, for example, in Croatia. When it comes to the Hungarian law, Hungarian regulation, the national minority lists enjoy a preferential threshold. The threshold is reached at one quarter of the votes needed for ordinary mandates from the electoral list. To illustrate it by an example, if a political party requires 4 votes to gain 1 seat, of course, they are fake numbers, but it works. So if a political party needs 4 votes to gain 1 seat, then a minority list, needs only 1 vote to gain a seat. To sum up, a minority list needs receive much fewer votes to gain a parliamentary seat. So moving on to the next point, I'd like to show you the outcome of the last 3 parliamentary elections to give you a better sense of the problem. So this is the numbers of the minority list, the votes of the minority list, and the red one is the preferential quota. As you can see, even the minority list with the highest support, the list of the Germans, was a far cry from gaining even a single mandate. And let me call your attention to the results of the smaller minorities, for example, the Greek minority or the Polish minority. So we can say that they had absolutely no chance to cross this threshold. The next election in 2080, however, brought a significant change, since the German minority slightly exceeded the quota, so they had an MP, and as for the last election, the picture is the same. The German minority was able to organize a professional campaign, and they were able to unite themselves, and as a result, they were able to gain 1 parliamentary mandate. But the remaining minorities had no chance at all. So closing this part of the presentation, I'm going to show you one more diagram that illustrates the number of the minorities according to the census and the preferential quota of 2014. However, it must be noted that this diagram may be a bit misleading, as the blue bars includes even the underage citizens who have no voting right, of course. That is to say that there are fewer voters than these blue bars suggest, and you can say that we have at least 9 minorities which have not even a faint chance to cross this threshold. So now we come to the next point, which is the judgment of the court. The applications were lodged by Miss Bakédzi, belonging to the Greek minority, and Mr. E.C., member of the Armenian community. The applicants focused on 3 features of the Hungarian minority voting system. Firstly, they claim that their minority has no prospect of attaining the preferential quota, considering actual population statistic, it was impossible for them to gain a seat in the parliament. The second objections regarding the fact that they have no real choice as minority voters. I will explain it in greater detail. And the third objection, the alleged violation of the secrecy of vote. Let me briefly summarize the standpoint of the Hungarian government. In the government's view, the regulation of the minority seats was a kind of positive discrimination, since a minority candidate needed receive fewer votes than candidates elected from the party list. In addition, the government said the principle of equal suffrage would have been violated if a minority voter could have voted both for the minority list and for the political party list. And furthermore, it was, said the government, it was the voter's free choice to register as a minority voter. Now let's turn to the court's assessment. As for the first objection, the court accepted the applicant's argument that the number of minority voters belonging to the same minority was not high enough to reach the preferential electoral threshold, even if all voters belonging to the given minority were to cast their vote for the minority list. Just to mention, 140 voters were registered as Greek minority voters. Meanwhile, the preferential quota was slightly above 2,000 votes, so 150 times more. And the court noted that the basic problem was the fact that the preferential threshold was part of a system where national minorities or national candidates could attain the requisite number of votes only from the ballot of minority voters belonging to the same minority group as themselves. To put it more simply, the Greek list could receive votes only from the Greek voters. Okay, as for the second objection, Ms. Bakidze and Mr. EC claim that the voting for minority lists deprived them of the opportunity to cast a meaningful ballot. What does it mean, meaningful ballot? They pointed out that the free elections necessarily imply a free choice of voters. And the court noted that in practice, as a consequence of being registered as minority voters, the applicants could only vote for their respective minority list as a whole or abstain from casting their vote. To underpin this statement, let me show you the voting slip received by the Greek voters. It's in Hungarian, but if you don't understand, you may choose the Greek language as well. So it's very easy. It's very easy to spot that. It's very easy to spot that the voters have two options: either to put a cross into the circle or not. Okay, so that's not a real choice, and yeah, the court took this view. And as for the third objection, it concerns the secrecy of vote. The court ruled out that, as I have noted earlier, should an elector choose to register as a national minority voter of a specific minority, he or she has only one choice, and in practice would be given a ballot paper with the candidates of the minority list instead of the ballot paper offering a choice between political parties. And as a consequence, all present in the polling station, especially members of the election commissions, would come to know that the elector had cast a vote for the candidates on the given minority list. And the final decision of the court, you can read this very important sentence, as the court ruled that found that the combination of these restrictions have voted the right to vote and the right to secret vote. And finally, some concluding remarks. First, I would like to explain the phrase "less is more" used in my title of my presentation. To understand it, let me quote the judgment. It's another very significant sentence. The Convention does not require states to adopt preferential threshold in respect of national minorities. However, when setting up a quorum for national minority groups, consideration needs to be given whether the threshold requirement makes it more burdensome for national minorities to gain a parliamentary mandate. Well, it's a kind of paradox that if Hungary hadn't introduced these preferential provisions for the minorities 10 years ago, then the court would have not stipulated that the violation of the right to vote. And the last question of my presentation regarding the future quo vadis minority voting. Of course, in order to put an end of this situation of voter disenfranchisement, the government needs to fundamentally rethink the parliamentary representation of national minorities. In doing so, the government has several options. It may abolish the whole system, however, it would be a painful step back. And the second option would be reserve seats for the minorities, just in Croatia or in Slovenia. And the third option may be the government may lower the preferential quota, but each of these solutions raises other questions. Well, thank you very much for your kind attention.